G'day, long time no talk. I was pretty much on the verge of deleting Twitter the other day. I've grown somewhat bored of it and I've got a lot going on in my life at the moment. So I figured I'd either just be rid of it completely or maybe unfollow everyone and just use it for tweeting out things that I enjoy or random things that I'm into that I think others might like to see or read, and maybe just throw out the odd streaming now tweet every now and then. Before I go ahead with this purge or deletion, I'm still not sure which one I'll opt for at the moment. I wanted to collect a couple of tweets and just talk about the toxicity in the gaming community. The Twitter accounts shown won't be censored because these are actual toxic twats, unnecessary smartasses, and just downright moody people that I imagine some would like to ignore completely. This does not mean you are in the right if you reach out and harass them or abuse them or anything like that. I want none of that as usual. The names will remain uncensored just because I imagine there are some people who will go out there and block those that they find to be too toxic, and I'm just giving them that opportunity to avoid them now rather than having to see their bullshit on Twitter down the road or something like that. So please remember, don't fucking abuse anyone who you see in my videos. I don't condone that, and I really do not appreciate that sort of behavior from anyone, even if it's towards people who are being dickheads. I just want to add a little bit of a spiel before we get into the tweets though, just so there's a bit of a background on this whole thing. A big issue in the gaming community are the console wars. I'd say it's one of the biggest, most toxic things we have going for us in the gaming community. Admittedly, it's something I took part in back around 2009, 2010. Looking back, nothing was gained and it was completely pointless in the end. Within my household, me and my brother would argue about the better games between PS3 and the 360. I'd argue Gears of War 2 was one of the best games, he'd argue Uncharted. I'd argue Forza was the best racing series, he'd argue Gran Turismo. I'd argue 360 had the better controller, he'd argue PS3, and so on. What actually happened when we sat down and played the games though, well, we both finished the campaign for Gears 2 about 3 or 4 times playing co-op. I played Uncharted 2 on my brother's PS3 after he showed me a few cutscenes of the first game and loved those cutscenes and wanted to see more. He played Dead Rising and had fun. I played Metal Gear Solid 4 and had fun. The bickering between us meant nothing in the end because all we were doing was playing games that we enjoyed, just on a different system. Gaming is enjoyment. Whether you're playing Dark Souls with a dance pad or soaking in story and atmosphere in a simple walking simulator, you're doing the same thing as most of us, enjoying your time spent. We all have that in common, and it's one thing I love when I think about the gaming community as a whole. So many different stories and experiences, so many different favorites and least favorites. I like a lot of games that my brother doesn't like and vice versa. Yet every now and then we'll sit down and chat about the reasons we like said games or don't like said games. Not everyone will enjoy the same things, but we should at least be able to recognize those differences and not let it corrupt us and bring toxicity into our hobby. Then there's the very vocal fanboys of gaming, an unfortunate scourge that brings no positives to gaming and even threatens to stunt the progression of the industry itself by very aggressively settling for whatever is thrown at them and antagonizing those who dare ask for better in their hobby. What am I doing with this video? Well, I want to point out these few people that I found on my timeline, both to allow people to avoid them and their toxicity in future, but also to point out the stupidity that is downplaying someone else's enjoyment of the same hobby for simply not playing on the supposed correct system. I want to highlight this pointless behavior in a sort of attempt at helping the gaming community just look a little better by shunning those who seem to bring the hobby down. I have a small following and a voice, so why not help set a better standard that someone could potentially follow and spread from there? I'm all for criticism, feedback, etc. But there are those who seem to not understand how to have fun in gaming and turn it into a dick measuring contest where, unless a game you enjoy has reached a specific Metacritic number or at least won an award or a Game of the Year award, it's not a game worth paying attention to. Hear that, those who enjoyed Deadly Premonition? Stop having fun with a game that didn't even win Game of the Year. So finally, let's take a look at a couple of the tweets that we can all learn from and do better going forward. I probably could have gathered a long list, but I decided to stick to just a few recent ones that were in my timeline, and I'll give out a general summary at the end. This is just to roughly get an idea of the kind of people that I personally come across on Twitter, and you'll more than likely come across as well. This one here, Andres, I believe it's pronounced, is one of the many vocal, toxic people that crowd Twitter and make gaming look bad in general. Let's stick together and make gaming great again. A fine sentiment, right? Well, why is he or she bringing it up? Because they decided to attempt to not only downplay past console mascots, but took the time to throw shade instead of being a normal gamer and just being excited about a game they're keen to play. After such a stupid take, a lot of people in the gaming community were rightfully pointing out that this was indeed a very stupid take and a rather uneducated one. Following on from that, there were supposed death threats sent to them, but after people have been asking for it, and I myself have been asking as well for proof, there's yet to be any screenshots shared, and there's no proof that they supposedly received all this negative backlash other than the retweets and the replies from people saying, hey, what you said was really dumb. So carrying on from that, they then tried to make the claim that it's up to the Sony people to make gaming great again for some reason. I'm not so sure this person actually plays games very often though, given their tendency to spout stupid shit all the time over Twitter. The only praise you'll see from this account is praise for Sony exclusives specifically. They never go out there and point out about how great gaming is in general, or share any memories of past experiences or anything like that. It's pretty much just a Sony pony account, I guess you could call it. Essentially, this person just spends more time shilling for Sony than they do actually saying anything worth listening to. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some really good games that are Sony exclusives. Some I enjoy, some I don't enjoy. So be it. But this person doesn't take the time to discuss reasons they like these games. They don't take the time to point out what makes these games great. They just sit there and point towards sales numbers. They just point at awards won. They point at a Metacritic score. And I don't think I've once ever seen this person actually explain what it is they like about said games. It's always this stupid dick measuring contest that they fall into, and they just spend more time being toxic towards other people that don't play on a Sony console. Here's another example of someone being unable to recognize fun unless the game meets a specific set of rules, such as awards and AAA budgets, even though AAA games release on PC anyway. But I'm pretty sure this person in particular is just very anti-PC gaming, and so they seem to let their emotions get the better of them in order to just downplay PC gaming, and are only capable of recognizing it as a bad option for gaming. Of course, none of what they say is backed up by any logic, any facts. They never present a critical argument that's objective or anything like that. They only ever point out that something is shit, and that's about as far as their argument goes. Here we find another dick measuring contest. This shows two people trying to one-up the other over two games that aren't even out yet. Hype can be good, and there's nothing wrong with being excited about an upcoming game. Never be ashamed for anticipating something that you want. But what does this little exchange do for the hobby? What did these two gain from this childish interaction? Well done, you're both as bad as each other and are completely incapable of discussing why you're excited about something and seem hell-bent on downplaying something you don't like instead. And it's over two games that aren't even out yet. Personally, I'm very excited to see how the both of them go, but I'm not going to downplay somebody else's excitement and try to call one game Game of the Year or another game Game of the Year when we don't even know how they play yet. You'll be able to find worse people than this, truly irrational people that reply with some very nasty shit online and act like complete scummy cunts. I just wanted to show these few tweets specifically because these are some of the general comments that you'll find in relation to the console wars and the PC is bad sort of vibe, and PC master race elitism and all that. Those who say truly disgusting things should just be completely ignored altogether, shunned entirely. But there are those who still bring a lot of toxicity into the community, such as these people that I've shown, and they should be called out for it too. They need to have their shitty takes just thrown out the window because they're not doing anything good for the hobby. They're not bringing forward any decent arguments or saying anything objective ever. So what can we do going forward from here? What can we learn? Well, I vote that people who are involved in the console war take a second to think about what it is they're trying to achieve and just what exactly will be gained out of it. We all enjoy video games, some games more than others. My enjoyment of Monster Hunter World was not dragged down just because The Last of Us received more awards. My love of Divinity Original Sin 2 isn't lower just because Halo 3 sold more copies. There is zero need to get defensive over a company and attack someone else's fun. That kind of toxicity gets us nowhere, does nothing for gaming, and brings with it no improvements to your own life. Ultimately, it's a pointless endeavor, and I cringe when I think about all the times someone needs to bring up that X game sold this many copies, or X console did this, so therefore you are lower than me on the peasant scale. Let's take the time to spread some positivity and actually fight the battles that are worth fighting. Tell Activision and Sony how shitty it is to withhold content from paying customers for a whole year. Tell Nintendo that their online service is awful and that the virtual console should be a permanent option that carries across the one account, which would encourage less people to rely on emulation, and it would save people from having to buy the same game multiple times or search for a pre-owned copy of an old retro game that's sitting at 3 times the price when it came out. Tell Microsoft to stop charging people to play free-to-play games. Tell any greedy publisher that loot boxes, gambling, and G-rated games and other scummy practices are not wanted. Let's focus on something important collectively, because the vocal minority can't do it alone. We play games for fun and enjoyment. No one is less than you for enjoying the same hobby but on a different box. Until the next video, thank you very much for checking this one out, and have a good one. Hold the sky tonight, right here. We're not gonna live from there. Tear your skin, exposed and fresh, holding on to every breath. We are just waiting.